So
All right. Okay. All right. Yay. Sorry about that, folks. We got a new computer system and obviously working some kinks out. So um, we're on item G4. So we need the approval of zone FY 2026-02 findings of fact conclusion clause. Someone could take that on, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ZON FY 2026-0002 with respect to findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the decision doc.
And I would second.
All right. Clerk Carl, please.
Councilmember Carver Herbert?
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes.
Councilmember Page?
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now we are moving on to continued public hearing. This is for ordinance 1051. And so, Ms. Thornborough?
Mayor and members of the council, again, thank you. Tonight, for this item, as the mayor noted, there's a public hearing that was left open from April 13th. And the request is for 3 different actions. The first of which is to hold the public hearing that was left open. The second would be to approve and have the third reading of 1051-26 by title only, and then to adopt the ordinance and approve the decision, the accompanying decision document for CPA fiscal year 2024 number 5 that was previously approved, but not the application was approved, but not the decision document, as we're waiting for the 3 hearings. This matter starts on page 101 of the packet tonight. And we're hoping that we took your very thoughtful discussion at the last hearing and were able to incorporate those matters into what's considered or labeled as option B. And really what that does is there are 3 different review types that can happen after a decision. That can be a council review, a council appeal, and a request for reconsideration. The council review, what that option B does, is a free review, or what we've previously noted as de novo review of a closed record. So no new evidence, but if new evidence were to be requested, a new hearing would be triggered, because you need to have a public hearing for the public to be able to refute any of that evidence. And then the council appeal and request for reconsideration in this option B would be an abuse of discretion standard, again, for closed record. So no new evidence in any situation unless you direct the new evidence under that council review, which would result in a new hearing. The council review would not be bound by the previous decision criteria, whereas the others would. They would be those abuse of discretion. The city attorney provided just a little slide that you saw in your packet that describes that. There are a couple of other things that I'd like to note. Mr. Bob Taunton was previously online, and it's my understanding that he was hoping to testify, but I also have his comments. Before I get to those, option A is just a free review of all. So there were 2 different options in your packet tonight. Option A would take all 3 of those different review types and be free review and not an abuse of discretion review. And again, it would be on a closed record should you go that route. And then back to Mr. Taunton's comments. He had noted in both drafts, all other changes are consistent in both drafts. On page 20, or in both, but I can, in both ordinances, section C, failure to notify. He had suggested that the updated wording really isn't failure to notify, that it should have a different title. And staff is going to suggest that that could be prejudicial notice of, or non-prejudicial notice deficiencies. And so that failure to notify that's been in code indicating that should the spirit of the noticing occur, not, but the full noticing, maybe there's some deficiency, now notes that the language has been tightened a little bit to indicate that there could not be prejudicial deficiencies. And for that reason, staff is proposing that title. And then on option B, it looks like there is just a little copy and paste error. On page 14, section G, there's part of a sentence that was in option A that's missing. And that needs to say, state for the purposes of applying Idaho Code 676535 to that appeals should consider that the decisions are final. But it was just a copy and paste error between the two. He had noted that he doesn't have comments on resolution 124526 and that he agrees with the recommendation of the free review for the council review with the abuse of discretion for the council or the appeal, as well as the request for reconsideration. So option B, he agrees with that. Thank you. Also, to go through the other changes that occurred, there is a material change, and that does come from what was previously referenced by Councilmember Carver Herbert's notes that had been provided previous to the last hearing, and that her comments were, why do you have two steps of appeals in some instances? And so all appeals would come directly to City Council. Staff supports that change because if it's ultimately coming to the council, why make an applicant and the public potentially go through additional steps? There's a new proposed table 86A, which is basically this slide, but a little bit more nuanced to fit with code that was in your packet tonight, talking about the standard. Throughout 86A3, previously code just talked to good cause, and that's been identified what those good cause may be, and so identified it a little bit more. And again, that failure to notify language was strengthened to reduce the potential for misuse or abuse of the provision. And in the required findings for design review applications, the council was not in favor of a proposed change to reference the comp plan, so that proposal has been deleted. New definitions of standing and free review have been added. And then, while it's not part of the ordinance, there is overlap in discussion. And so I just wanted to bring it up. And then the next item that we're going to consider, the public meeting and hearing guideline policy, there was quite a bit of discussion about who has the ability to appeal an administrative with notice decision, or what we're often referring to as a design review decision, although that could go to minor land division and other, there are 3 decisions that it could go to. And council had discussed on making that standing easier to achieve. And so you do not have to have submitted any comments to be able to appeal now. And I just wanted to point that out, even though that's in the policy decision or document, excuse me, it was part of an overall encompassed discussion. And with that, I stand for any questions.
I do want to add on to that. I think staff really did listen to the last council meeting. And, you know, I think thinking back to that last council meeting, Teresa, Councilmember Jorgensen and I were kind of on the same page that we want to have that ability to have free review. And then we also, I think, incorporate the ability, you know, to have no, you know, kind of based on the record. And so I think with this option, if there's concern, you can pull it off at the review, pull it off the consent agenda. So that's really the onus is on council to really read the consent agenda, because that's your opportunity to have free review of the decision. Because once it's appealed and once it goes to reconsideration, it's going to be based on the record only. So I thought that that was a really good kind of compromise that staff came up with. That. So, it addresses everybody's concerns. So. Questions for Ms. Dawn?
Clarification, that did not come from staff, that solution. That did come from the mayor. But thank you for that, Mayor.
So, Mr. Mayor, I do have a couple questions.
Absolutely. Your turn.
Okay, so as I was going through the packet one more time and I was looking at, so I am looking, it can be either option A or option B. So let's just go with option B. What would be?
Ms. Carver Herbert,
Yes.
can you just reference the packet
I will,
number?
I will when I get to it. Yes.
Page number?
Yes, I intend to do that. Thank you. So on page 150 of the council packet numbers, the table refers to the public noticing requirements. And I have to apologize because I didn't notice this in the previous review, but I noticed that comprehensive plans or ordinance amendments, design review under that require a public hearing. And I believe minor land divisions previously had neighborhood meetings, and this looks as if they will no longer have that if it is agreed. So can you explain the reason for that?
Mayor, Councilmember Herbert, on the ordinance and comprehensive plan, often that's a city initiated rather than an applicant initiated matter. And so having that neighborhood meeting often, well, I think a work session is great, but having the neighborhood meeting may be in some respects redundant to the process.
Okay, what about for design review?
For design review public hearings, there's already been a neighborhood meeting that occurred at that admin with notice process. And then once there's been 10 or more comments received, then it would be turned into a public hearing. And so that also would be redundant at that time because the applications already had that neighborhood meeting, and then it would be switched into the public hearing process.
So, okay. So then on page 150, we're talking about public noticing requirements and for neighborhood meetings. So since there would be no X in that box for design review applications, that means that there would be no neighborhood meeting.
Mayor, Councilmember Herbert, so the way that the process would work is an applicant would submit a design review, and it's not triggered, a public hearing isn't triggered until there's more than 10 comments that have been received. So they would start under that process with the neighborhood meeting, and then it would start going through the process, and the city would start receiving those comments. And then that would be what triggers it to go into a public hearing. And so for that reason, the agency comments in the neighborhood meeting would have already occurred. So having to go back and redo it is redundant for that application.
Okay, I think I may be seeing that then because it's under this section. Starts out with public hearing. It used to be public hearing section. It got changed to noticing, and that noticing falls under the public hearing and testimony after hearing and testimony procedures. On page 147.
I think she was.
Yeah. Ms. Mayor, Councilmember Herbert, Carver Herbert, my apologies. So if you look on the second line, from the bottom on page 150, it specifically says design review process under 8685 public hearing,
Okay.
Whereas the design review Applications processed as administrative with notice is the second line from the top in that same table.
Okay.
And then throughout the document, it talks about the three different types that are processed, the three different application types that are processed as administrative with notice versus a public hearing type of application.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then the only other concern though I would have, I guess I'm trying to understand about the comprehensive plan because that's such a significant document for our city. It's a vision document and I think citizen engagement and is really, really an important component. So walk me through again what you are envisioning when there is a comprehensive plan. If we don't have a noticing or a neighborhood meeting of sorts around a comprehensive plan, is there any additional opportunity for the members of the public to come to have input before it actually turns into a public hearing?
Mayor, Councilmember Carver or Herbert, certainly that could be something that's baked into. I would recommend the policy handbook on that. For example, if we're updating by adding if the city makes changes to the master parks plan, for example, and then updates that into the comprehensive plan, it's a citywide thing. And certainly a neighborhood meeting is great, but staff would suggest a work session may be a better way to frame that. A neighborhood meeting is fine if we want to call it that. We have discussed in zoning changes in not required through code, but trying to have some level of work sessions as they go through the process. We can not accept that change and make neighborhood meeting a requirement for those matters. Certainly any way that you plan on, as you vote tonight, I guess.
Ms. Thorne, I'm a little bit confused. So that would mean any change to the comprehensive plan would require a neighborhood meeting? So for instance, we just adopted ACHD's impact fees. So we would have to have a neighborhood meeting about kind of just a simple administrative issue like that. That is something that we do for the county. I'm not sure.
That's how it's been working all along.
Right. But I guess to my point, do we really need to have neighborhood meetings over small administrative changes like that? I would argue no, but that's obviously up to the council.
And I think I have some agreement with that. I mean, obviously I've known of Ada County has been an example. I know the fire district has had to go through that process. So I can understand the rationale that perhaps on these smaller, and that's what I'm thinking is, well, it feels to me that those types of applications, even though they're an amendment to the comp plan, they don't raise to the level of significance of an actual comp plan change. I mean, with the exception, parks, people have a lot of input and have feelings about the park and the green belt. And certainly if there are changes about that, they may want to have input into that. I definitely understand the more administrative of nature. I happen to have attended the Ada County impact fee neighborhood meeting, and I was the only one there. So I certainly know the challenges that come along with it. But I think I really am particularly interested in trying to protect some component of neighborhood and citizen engagement in the comprehensive plan when it comes to major, and it may not be major, but in terms of maybe a shift in some direction about how a neighborhood may be looked at developing in the future, or how it might be. And certainly we know that zoning, that the end result of zoning is set upon the comprehensive plan. So they need to be in alignment with each other. So if we make changes to the comprehensive plan, then we want to make sure that our citizens are engaged or have an opportunity to engage in that. And so that's it. Can you see a way that we might be able to assure that happens?
Mayor, Councilmember Carver Herbert, I think that is very valid. In my tenure, I believe that the city has tried to make sure that it's open and notorious and on Facebook and whatnot. And there could be a little bit more discretion if that's in that policy, if you want to put some sort of level on the policy, in that policy, the hearing manual that is the next item, or have non-documented policy, but certainly you could keep it in the policy, or you could say, I disagree with removing that requirement in code and keep it in code. So those are kind of the options available is
Okay.
if you move to approve this, but don't, with the exception of the removal of that neighborhood meeting requirement is an option, or to move that to the admin handbook, I guess, the hearing handbook.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Thornburg, I think it'd be good for the council to hear is there a cost associated with that or just a staff time? And can you just, every time we have a neighborhood meeting, like for ACHD, what is involved, right? And I think if we do rezonings and things like that, we have a public hearing, we have, that's all part of that as well before we make it the comprehensive plan. But I think it'd be good for the council here, just what's involved if we have to have, and then everybody can make a decision whether they want to keep that or not.
Mayor, members of the council, a neighborhood meeting, what's involved is on its face, it's showing up and having a meeting with people prior to the application being submitted. And then that conversation hypothetically being incorporated into whatever application, whether it be city initiated or not. And from there, the public hearing process starts, and that it's not required by LUPA. It's something that the city does as an addition to the state requirements. For a minor amendment, it's not the end of the world, but it does require whoever is making that change. And it would usually be an agency on the comp plan. 9 times out of 10 on ordinance, it's the city. You have to think through an additional month or so in your noticing and your strategy and booking this room, which is not easy to do, by the way. And then there's a cost associated with the noticing of such. The ACHD specific area plan, for example, in this instance, a comp plan is a citywide, you can have the property postings, but for the 4 signs were quoted about, I think it was about $3,000. We were crafty and we didn't spend quite that much. But then you have the legal notices that can run anywhere from say 50 to a couple, depending on, if you have to get a bunch of addresses in there, et cetera, it can be several $100s. And so there are noticing costs and there are timing costs. It makes it very difficult to respond quickly to a request because you add it another month easily, more than a month with that meeting, which is all doable. But staff would suggest some sort of a work session with the council tends to be pretty fruitful in working through matters, particularly those that have concern, because those concerns are coming through the hearing process and being enveloped through the hearing process as well.
Okay.
So there's no right way, wrong way. Staff certainly understands if you want to keep that in there, but the reasoning is because they are citywide, and because they are typically city initiated. So if city council says, hey, can you get this ordinance changed or can you make this change? My answer usually is going to say, yeah, it's going to take me about 6 months. And so it's just shaving about a month off.
So time, about $3,500,
Potentially. The signage would be more Well, the specific area plan was an interesting one where an ordinance is also catching a property.
But, and I think, Mr. Mayor, I think my biggest interest in this is particularly trying to preserve the engagement for the comprehensive plan, in particular as it relates to major changes. The issue around individual ordinances, I can see a little bit of the complexity about that. What I would have to say, though, is I would say that the 2015 change that changed the zoning of R3 zoning happened in an ordinance change that was piled on upon many, many other things. And so, I mean, I hate to be in a position where we're taking away a process. The neighborhood meetings were relatively new into the process. I believe in about the 2015 timeframe, the city made the decision to add neighborhood meetings into the city's process as a way to help involve citizens more. And I guess I am reluctant to let go of this in our process. But
No,
certainly
that's
I'm
fair.
one vote. So
No, that's fair. Any further discussion, Councilor?
I think we can take that up in deliberation.
Okay. With that, anybody online or in public to continue the public hearing? Hearing none. Oh, sorry. Oh, there we go. Didn't have that. Sorry, Dee.
Mhm.
All right. Dee Jackson, thank you.
I'm hoping you'll let me speak again, even though I spoke at the last.
Well, the public hearing's still open, so yeah, we are allowing it. Just
Thank you.
state your name and address, please.
Dean Jackson Heim, 8550 West Atwater Drive, Garden City. Thank you for allowing me another bite of the apple. I did forget to say a couple things last time. So I see that you have incorporated some changes that I really appreciate, and I don't want to enumerate them all in the interest of time. But I appreciate your attention to some concerns that were raised. It's interesting that Council Member Carver Herbert referenced the comprehensive plan amendments, and I think work sessions are very valuable, but in my experience, work sessions are for the council to work, and I have not known there to be a lot of public comment or back and forth with the public, and so maybe there's a way to put something and codify that has to be a work session, but it's more like an open house where there are it's noticed as a meeting so that you have a quorum, but that people would be able to engage and actually provide some feedback at that time, even if it's just something like adopting a new impact fee schedule or something. I'm in the camp that I think people should be able to talk more rather than less, and I wish there was more opportunity for public comment on agenda items at the meetings, even if they're not public hearings. So that's my opinion. I have one major heartburn still with this ordinance and the accompanying resolution, which, since it's incorporated by reference in the ordinance, I will speak to it a little bit. So after a neighborhood meeting, I'm reading, and if I'm reading it wrong, please someone tell me. I'm reading it that there's only 17 days for people to submit comments to get them in the record for a possible future appeal. My concern with that is the applicant often makes changes after the neighborhood meeting, and the public doesn't get to see those changes within 17 days. And I think that the applicant probably makes changes sometimes to their proposal all the way up until the day of the council meeting. And the public doesn't get the chance to comment on that. So if I go to a neighborhood meeting and I see a proposal, like when they did the apartments over at Strawberry Glen, we went to that neighborhood meeting and we saw what they had to say. Then by the time it got through design review, it wasn't the same proposal. And I have some significant heartburn about this deadline of 17 days to submit anything to get it on the record.
I understand from what I've kind of heard and gleaned that the neighborhood meetings are not super well attended and often maybe superfluous. So it doesn't seem to me like there's a really big necessity to even put a deadline in the ordinance. If you're not getting people coming to the neighborhood meeting, there's obviously not a lot of interest. And the people who are paying attention will look online and see if there's been anything new or added. But I guess I'm at a loss to understand why the council would not want to accept public comment all the way up to maybe the deadline to get it in the council packet. I'm not saying it should be all the way up to the day of the meeting, but obviously you need to have a deadline for the council packet to be prepared. But I feel like people should have the opportunity to look and see what is the latest iteration of this proposal and be able to make comments on it. Otherwise, you have no chance. And if I go to the neighborhood meeting and I think everything looks hunky-dory and I find out later on that something has changed that I do have a concern about, I have no chance to tell you about it or even to get it in the record in case I wanted to appeal, which I really don't want to, but that's my biggest concern with that. And so I think that the rest of it looks to me very much improved from what I saw last time. And my concern is always just that, you know, some of us have lived here a while and we've been paying property taxes for a while. And I know you're here to service the developers and to help them get their projects through, but I also would like to feel like that the rest of us have some equal consideration on some of these things too. And that's all. So
Very
thank you
good
so
feedback.
much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak again. And I'm just going to check my notes real quick and make sure that I didn't miss anything this time. So,
No, well, thank you, and we appreciate your feedback,
thank you.
Ms. Thornborough. No, anybody else in the crowd or online? Hearing none.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you. To provide a little bit of rebuttal to the public hearing, I just wanted to explain the process of, we'll call design review, but again, it could be minor land division or the extension of non-conforming setbacks. That's what this administrative with notice process is. So an administrative process would be no one's notified. It comes in, staff reviews it for compliance with code, and then it goes out the door. And so you'll see things like a residential house. If somebody wants to add a deck or build a new home, that's an administrative matter that doesn't go to the neighborhood's not noticed at all, for example, or signs or mobile home permit move in and out. There are several processes that come in and out without another body knowing besides the staff who are processing those permits. So that's administrative. And then on the other hand, you have a public hearing where those matters automatically, when they come through the door, they're noticed for a full public hearing. And that's the majority of what we're talking about. And then that administrative with notice is what we're talking about a lot in this ordinance. And what happens with that is before an applicant can submit, they have to have a neighborhood meeting to discuss things. We used to, in design review, require a public hearing for every little thing. And we found more often than not, any matter where people cared about, they'd say, hey, my bedroom's right here. Can you plant a tree? And that's all that would happen. But we have to do public hearing after public hearing after public hearing. And so this administrative with notice deals with, there may be an issue that may filter up to a public hearing. And the way that code is drafted, that is now if there's 10 different households that submit comments after that neighborhood meeting. And so that neighborhood meeting occurs, and then staff, along with the design consultants, reviews the application. And that 17-day time period is to give the city a time period to be able to say, we can prove it now. We've given enough time for comments to come in. And so it just gives the city a deadline, not a deadline. That's the earliest the city can approve it. So if there's additional materials coming in, the city doesn't necessarily approve it at that 17-day mark, but more often than not, we see a lot of, not you as a body don't see them, but staff sees a lot of applications where no one's interested. Nobody goes to the neighborhood meeting, nobody provides comment, nobody asks to be an interested party. And that interested party is just, hey, keep us apprised. And so at that 17 days, whether working with the consultants changes something or not, provides somebody that opportunity to say, I'm really upset about that location of the window. Can it be high view so it doesn't look into my backyard? The changes now, and then there's a 15-day right to appeal. And so if you're an interested party, you'll be notified of the changes as they come in, and that could give you a trigger. Granted, it might be, whoa, I don't like where that tree moved, and now I want more time to submit comments, but there is still that 15-day right of appeal, whether you've submitted comments or not. And so that 17 days really is, the applicant is hanging out often, waiting to be approved. They've gone through the consultation, they've talked through code, they've checked all their boxes, and it just gives us a day where we can go, okay, we've given enough time to receive that input from the community. If it needs to be longer, perhaps it needs to be longer. But on the balance, we see more often than not, applicants will come through with zero public testimony all the way through. Then what this board, what the council sees tends to be those that are big issues. There's a lot of concern there, and what's being proposed, if there's 10 households that are saying this is an issue we need to talk about, then it's triggered to a public hearing under this process. And so hopefully that helps identify why that 17 days is there. It's giving staff enough time to say, the time has allotted that we can go ahead and give this applicant an approval or denial.
Just one other follow-up question. How much is an appeal?
Mayor, Councilmember Carver Herbert, I don't know off the top of my head. I can get you.
Building. This one? No.
Mr. Mayor, I'm fine to move on. Don't need to take more time to do that. Several $100s.
Mayor, Councilmember Carver Herbert,
$800.
I am hearing it's $800.
Any further questions? Okay, with that, I think we're okay to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
All right. Deliberations?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start off. Council members, how I feel about land use is the further we move away from the requirements of LUPA, the more we find ourselves on our own. Anytime we build in additional meetings, hearings, rights, processes that are not required by LUPA, that becomes a garden city baby that we have to feed and water and take care of and send to college. and it's just not required by LUPA. And the more complication that brings to the process, the less friendly we are to people trying to do business in this community. Additional hearings are very real time and money for people. I'm personally in favor of broadening our net for what constitutes someone having standing, and taking a liberal view of in my mind, if you live in Garden City, you have standing, or if you have a business in Garden City, you have standing. And you don't need to submit a comment at a neighborhood meeting in order to have standing. I think that's silliness, because things do come up later. Somebody isn't interested initially until they hear or see something that they don't like when they do attend a meeting. Should they not have standing because they didn't attend a neighborhood meeting that isn't required by LUPA? So as we look at the state more broadly, in this last legislative session is a good example. More and more we're seeing our legislature preempting cities from being autonomous because cities go rogue. Those are strong words. Cities develop their own processes that are not required by ordinance and statute. When it comes to land use, we have robust framework in place with LUPA. I personally don't like to see us add processes that are outside of LUPA. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
Council President, I really appreciate you going first, because those were very well stated comments, and I appreciate that. And I agree with those sentiments. I would also add, we had some other discussions around the neighborhood meetings that Council Member Carver Herbert brought up. To me, the definition of a neighborhood meeting is something where something is going to come before council that's quasi judicial. So an application for a specific piece of land that's going to be developed or something like that. Something that's citywide. I am open, by the way, I should say first, to getting citywide feedback on comprehensive plan updates and being gingerly with the steps we take on comprehensive plan updates. But I don't like the term neighborhood meeting around a topic such as that, just because it's not a neighborhood topic, it's a citywide topic. So I don't know what the steps are that we could implement to make sure that the umbrella goes out to the whole city. I mean, I know we've already got a process that does that. Whether it could be more robust, I don't have any specific thoughts or ideas in my head. But I wanted to comment about that as well. And I guess the last thing is I'll just comment about the recommendations and the standards of review that we've been talking about. I agree with option B. I think option B is the right one for us, in my opinion. So I guess those would be the things I would add to our conversation.
Thank you.
Mayor, fellow council members, as I approach this this subject very seriously, because there's so much implied here, I must step back, and I think there was a comment about our job is to, help facilitate developers and serve developers. And I don't, in an aspect that our role is to serve our residents and the businesses that do business in Garden City. And to that point, I am 1,000% behind President of the Council. I believe those who have standing are those who live in Garden City and those who own businesses. And I would clarify that in Garden City. It's our responsibility to represent those individuals. And oftentimes it's our job to help enable good development in the city to the benefit of our residents and businesses. In order to do that, I think sometimes we lose the sight that if we're allowing good development to happen at a speedy pace, that benefits the city, our residents and businesses, right? Then the question is, are we allowing enough time to pause or reconsider, reevaluate decisions that are being handed up to the council for review? And in my opinion, there's enough unique situations within the city, and I've stated it once, I want to reiterate, there's only been one time where I thought that P&Z missed something. Generally, when I want to take a second look at an application or a recommendation, it's not necessarily that I believe somebody missed something. It is because I believe it is my job as an elected to bring this perspective that I've knocked doors throughout the city. I've met with most of those businesses within the city. I hope that I have my ear to the ground is what's driving some of the interest within the city. That P&Z, I don't expect them to do that. I want them looking at code and making a pretty black and white decision. And then if there's a gray area, that this council has the latitude to assess that and ask a few more questions and allow the city and our residents the opportunity to benefit from the best information. So I do believe that, in my opinion, not a big surprise here, is that I prefer the option A with the free review. And I love the caveat that it's incumbent on us to look at the consent agenda and identify those things that need to be reconsidered or that we might have more curiosity about. I think that our city is, to the President of the Council's comment, I understand wanting to stick closely to, and I concur we should, where there's established law, it makes it easier for all of us. And I don't like to create a bunch of, just like if somebody sells me software, I don't like to customize it, because if you try to unwind it or keep track of those changes, it becomes very difficult. However, I would also err on the side of, we're in a sweet spot. We're large enough to have the resources to manage and be creative, and small enough to recognize when we need to do that. And I don't think that we would be venturing too far off of or too into muddy waters that would tie us up into processes that are unmanageable by allowing some of our own processes to flow through to our community that makes sense to our community and benefits our residents and businesses. So, having said all of that, I think I stated that I would prefer option A, to allow the council members to have that option to step in and pull back and ask for a review. And I would also, I truly appreciate Charlie, Mr. Wadham's summary, because it really helped kind of clarify and crystallize how it should play out. And that free review standard is a closed record, right? So I'm very, very passionate and interested in doing the right thing. I will say, I think based on the description, and Ms. Thornborough, thank you very, very much for your clarification on the administrative applications and processes, because that was very helpful to me. And I do think that if the record is there and available, 17 days seems reasonable. If we have to make a decision, the city has to, we can't just pause everybody and let them sit in limbo. And then a 15-day timeline for appeal is reasonable. And again, if we open the standing, I think that helps mediate that.
Thank you.
So I think where I come out is obviously has already been discussed a little bit. I think when it comes down to really my preferred standard of review, I prefer option B. And I like the fact that the appeals and their requests for reconsideration are abuse of discretion on a closed record. And I'm open to the idea that the council initiated review be a free review. However, the way this ordinance is actually written, it's a free review of a closed record. And I know that there was discussion in our last meeting about, and somewhat in deference to Councilmember Jorgensen, and I believe Mayor Jacobs had mentioned perhaps having some opportunity to be able to take in something new if something new gets brought to the table. Where does this process allow us to do that? And it appears that could be done if upon a council initiated review that the record is opened by holding a public hearing. And I see that that's listed on page 136 of the council packet, but it's not clear. As I read through the rest of the packet, it wasn't really clear to me that having, if we choose option B, will we indeed be able to allow a public hearing during a council initiated review if we want to allow new information in? And I also had other questions or concerns, I think, about some of the definitions. If we choose the standard of review, abuse of discretion, I think that there may be some concerns that we may get locked in more than we want to when it comes to making decisions with recommendation. On page 144 of the packet, it describes basically what the decisions we would make, final decision with recommendations. And I may be completely misunderstanding these and how these are applied. And so I think probably questions for Ms. Thornborough maybe at some point, if this is definitely a direction we go, but if we choose abuse of discretion, the way I'm reading this, if I see most of the decisions we make come to us with a recommendation from P&Z. The only ones that we typically do not see with a recommendation before coming to us are typically design review applications. So a good number of applications that do come to us have gone through P&Z already, and they are coming to us with a recommendation. And the way I'm reading this document is basically our position is if we choose an abuse of discretion standard, our role is we affirm the recommendation the P&Z has given us. Now, obviously, I see that we have maybe some opportunity to bring new information into the record, and then we can sustain the recommendation from P&Z and modify it with conditions. But I'm curious to know if we may be more locked in to our ability when we are actually the final decision maker on decisions that come to us with recommendation. I think we want to be looking at those as if it is a free review. We want to be able to be looking at all of the information on the record and be making it in a free review. And the standard and the definition that I see on page 144 doesn't necessarily provide that. So as you always know, I'm more caught up on the process and the procedure of it, because the procedure is what gets us into trouble sometimes. And as the procedure, if in taking in Council President Page's concern, if we deviate too much from LUPA, then we need to make sure that our processes and procedures are where we want them to be. And that for me is where I would question, one, if we choose option B, but have the ability, does this document as written, will it allow us the ability on a council initiated review to have a public hearing to bring new information into the record?
Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Carver Herbert brings up a great typo where I think we just copied an old table and got it in there. Can I point to the last draft that you had before the drafts in your packet tonight? And staff's recommendation intended to be these matters that were in the last draft, not to make an abuse of discretion for recommendations. And so I'll read these to you. So final decision with recommendation. One option would be to sustain, affirm the recommendation. The recommendation shall be sustained if upon de novo review. I believe the city attorney would now like that all to say free review, so that would need to be updated. The reviewing body determines that the evidence relied upon in the recommendation is more persuasive than competing evidence when applied to the applicable approval criteria. And so it does go back, and if you read each one of those, that the intent would be that those are free review, that a recommendation would not be required to have an abuse of discretion.
So are you saying from basically what the description that you have in option A under those decisions would be more of what you're thinking would fall, even if we chose? Because I mean, maybe as the council have to be in agreement, what are the three standards that we want? There's council review, there's appeal, there's reconsideration.
So
those are the three. And and maybe option B is the best option for most of us, and maybe option A is really the best option for some of us. But it seems to me that the hybrid for me is the ability to have a public hearing at the council initiated review, if that's possible, and not to be locked into the definition in option B under the decision section.
Mayor, Councilmember Carver Herbert, members of the council, yes, the intent by staff was what's in option A for decisions with a recommendation is what's in option A, and that was intended to be in both drafts. The changes between the three would be what happens after a decision. So council review, appeal, and the reconsideration requests. And so the recommendation from staff, certainly you would have, in a free review, have to have the ability to consider new evidence. And so an abuse of discretion standard doesn't, in my opinion, make sense. But the option B does have that section apparently incorrect, and my apologies, and thank you for catching that. But the intent, staff's intent, was not to have a recommendation have to have an abuse of discretion. Just the appeal and the reconsideration request under option B. And then the council review would be a free review, all based on the record.
So to summarize, Jenna, so if it's pulled off the consent agenda, it's free review as you just described. If someone has to appeal, they have to appeal based on the record, i.e. what error was made in the record for an appeal. And the exact same thing for reconsideration. It's on the record. What mistake do we make on the record? So the goal was, when we listened to you the last meeting, is we have the ability to have the free review if you pull it off the consent agenda, something to Councilmember Jorgensen's point that she wants to look at and things like that. And then, based on that information, that's your free review opportunity. So if you don't pull it off the consent agenda and you approve the consent agenda, you've lost the opportunity for free review. Then it would get appealed. It's based on the record. You have to show an error in the record, or the appellant would have to show an error where was a mistake made. Same with reconsideration. So when we were doing this, we really tried to kind of cater to the concerns to all the council members where we had the opportunity to really pull it off the consent agenda if we saw something, but then that's kind of your shot, right? Once it goes to appeal, the appellant has to tell us what we did wrong. Same with the reconsideration. So, and that was option B. Did I articulate that correctly?
Mayor, thank you. As this moves forward, I would request that whoever makes a motion, should it go forward with a decision tonight, that if it's option A, to clarify whether or not there would be a desire to change section C on page 20 of the drafts, of both drafts, to be, instead of failure to notify, non-prejudicial noticing deficiencies. And then if it's option B that moves forward, unless you like that abuse of discretion, on page, starting on page 10, the final decision with recommendation standards, that if it is option B and you agree that that's what it should say, specify that that's the language that you would like in option B, if it moves forward with option B as being the decision tonight. Does that make sense?
Is that everybody clear on that?
So this language right here that Council Member Carver Herbert just brought up, that's in option A, was intended to be in option B as well.
So that would be option B under review.
Correct. And so if you move forward with approving option B, just let us know that you agree with what staff's intent was. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor and council members, when we're presented with two options as we have today before us, it's difficult to make a motion that reflects both. Either one option gets ignored entirely, or the opposite happens. And so I just want to remind you procedurally, I'm about to make a motion, and if you don't like my motion, you don't wait for a vote, you just don't second it, and the motion will die for lack of a second. And then someone else could make a motion picking the other option. So I think that's the cleanest way to handle these split option A, option B scenarios that we sometimes get. With that being said, I move to approve Ordinance 1051-26, option B, stripping language from option A where indicated on the cut and paste error.
I will second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Clerk, call roll, please.
Council, Mayor, Council President Page, does that include the updated proposal to the title, failure to notify to non-prejudicial noticing deficiencies?
Those were Bob Tompkins' notes.
Oh yeah, and I'm sorry, I just didn't see those notes. I understand they came today, but if I don't have it in front of me, it's just not in front of me. So I heard it for the first time from the podium. So I would actually, do you have written notes? I just want to make sure that I'm getting this right.
Failure to notify. And so in your title, it staff is proposing prejudicial noticing deficiencies, saying prejudice. Then you have to say something just a bit.
Right, then it's not.
Instead of saying decent time to
Thank you. So let me amend this. motion, please. So I move as to ordinance 1051-26 to approve option B, stripping the language from option A where indicated from the podium, and then changing the title on page 20 for failure to notify to non-prejudicial notice deficiencies. I think we're looking at the spirit of the notice there. So thank you.
Motion, have a second?
Yes, and I will second again the modified motion.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, clerk, call roll, please.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
No.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert.
Yes, may I speak to the reason for my vote?
You may.
The only reason I'm supporting this is because I believe that the standard review are my choices. I still have great concern about the removal of the comprehensive plan from a neighborhood meeting. And it would be my hope and intention that we find a more reasonable solution to ensure that we maintain community engagement to address that.
Mr. Mayor, may I address that to
Yeah,
my colleague?
Right.
I would hope with a comprehensive plan that each and every one of us would have not only one, but a number of work sessions where the entire city is invited to come and participate, and the council is obliged to listen. Unlike a neighborhood meeting where council members are not in attendance, and our temperature of that neighborhood meeting is filtered through staff notes that are sent to us later. So in the example of a citywide decision like a comprehensive plan change, I think the best tool to reach everyone is a work session, because then we are there listening to it versus a neighborhood meeting. So to that one narrow thing, I realize it doesn't address the rest of your concern.
Sure. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I do vote yes on this motion, but that is with reservation.
Thank you. So ordinance passes. So,
Now we'll need the motion for the third reading.
okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Motion for the third reading?
I move to amend, to have the clerk read by title only, ordinance 1051-26. I guess it would be as amended.
Second.
Second.
Second. Clerk, call roll, please.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen.
No.
Third reading, ordinance 1051-26, an ordinance of the City of Garden City, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, amending Title 8 Development Code, Chapter 6 Administration, Article A General Provisions, Section 2 Duties and Authority, amending Section 3 General Application Process, amending Section 4 Required Application Information, repealing Section 5 Administrative Process with Notice, repealing Section 6 Administrative Process without Notice, amending Section 7 Public Hearing Process, adding Section 7 Council Initiated Review, amending Article B Specific Provisions, Section 3 Design Review, amending Chapter 7 References, Article A Definitions, Section 2 Definition of Terms, repealing all ordinances or part thereof to the extent they conflict with this ordinance, providing all other ordinances, including the official code, are still in effect, notwithstanding some provisions thereof being eliminated, providing for a severability clause, approving a summary of the ordinance, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. A motion to adopt and publish 1051-26.
Mr. Mayor, I so move.
Second.
A motion second. Clerk, call roll, please.
Councilmember Rasmussen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
No.
Councilmember Page.
Yes.
And then next we have a motion to approve the decision document. Oh, or is that the next one? Am I getting ahead of myself? Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. CPAFY 2024-0005.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the decision document found on page 163 for CPA FY 2024-0005.
Motion
Second.
second. Motion a second. Any further discussion? Clerk, call roll.
Councilmember Carver Herbert,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, next is resolution 1245-26. Resolution for this regarding public hearing procedures. Director Thunberg.
Mayor, members of the council, we've already discussed this matter in the last matter at some level. To note the policy or some of the changes, or the changes, not some of the changes, the changes proposed since the last time that you saw this matter on April 13th. We've already noted the policy change where the standing is more liberally applied and you don't have to have provided written comments on administrative with notice applications to appeal. And then sections regarding council initiated reviews, appeals, and reconsideration have been consolidated into one chapter called post decision reviews and drafted concurrently, or not concurrently, consistently with what you just decided. And so that's good news because they do read together by you opting for option B. There is clarification that radius notice for public hearings, while they're 300 foot, are distinct from mailing notices of 300 feet for neighborhood meetings, so that there isn't confusion in what those two matters are doing in the requirements for public hearing noticing. Interested party definition has been added. Already noted the appeal rights are granted to anybody with standing. And then neighborhood meeting notices now specifies that the notices must be the city generated noticing and be mailed to the city. There's an image update to the signage requirements so that they're accurate. Noticing materials for signs must now, it's clarified that they must be made of durable materials that are capable of withstanding weather conditions. And a notice of appeals, it clarifies that interested parties will be noticed even though they may not be able, or unless they're the appellant, they would not be able to provide comment in an appeal. And the reconsideration reflects, where it didn't previously, reflects an abuse of discretion standard. With that, I stand for questions. Oh, I have one other. On page 202 of the packet, excuse me, the standard of review, it notes de novo, and again, we're hoping to scrub everything to be free review. And so that language, if you move forward, staff would request that you consent to it being changed.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Council President.
I move to approve resolution 1045-26 as amended on page 202 to scrub language of de novo to open or free review.
I would second.
All right, the motion second, if there's discussion. Clerk Arledis?
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes.
Councilmember Page?
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen?
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert?
No.
All right, well, thank you for that. That was pretty meaty stuff. So we've been working on this for quite some time. So thanks to council and staff and Mr. Wadhams. It's nice to kind of get those done. And I thought the debate was very healthy. So I appreciate that. Okay. Mr. Snyder. So we're moving on to reconsideration of denial for the Edgemere subdivision. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I do have an updated presentation. I have it on a USB stick as well, unless I did the email, but. Of course, thank you. Did I get that correctly? on the share? I just put it on that side. I just want to make sure that
It does look like you're sharing.
I'm gonna have to ask the city to get a Microsoft account.
Should already have.
I'm gonna screenshot this. Do this really quick. Do this really fast. I'm pretty confident that it's sharing the screen, but I may have done it wrong.
Charlie, you see that all right? We'll pick those, yeah.
Do you want me just to move on with the sign-in portion, or just kind of push it together? It's fine either way for on my
I
side.
think the only person you're screen sharing with is our city attorney, so
Okay.
I don't think there's anybody else online.
Just with the sign-in here on
Ah.
this one, I can always just kind of, hey, look over here in the corner. It's a little small.
Let me see. Screen sharing with anybody who.
There you go.
All right, thank you very much. Jaden Schneider, I'm the applicant working on behalf of the developer, 3770 North Jackie Lane, Boise, Idaho. First off, we said at the last meeting, the reconsideration meeting, but thank you for your time to hear this out again and to let us bring this before you one more time. I really do hope that we've tried to address as many questions that were asked, try to come up with a site that works quite well. Edgemere subdivision, it was the half-acre site, R3 medium density residential. The proposal is 8 attached townhomes with 1 common lot for 9 total parcels. The developer had worked on a site in Garden City very similar to this. It's called Quad 6 subdivision. It was approved in 2023, I believe. It was off of Adams Street and right near the intersection of 47th Street and Adams. I just wanted to bring this one up as it's similar to what we've done before. They have actually applied for their building permits already for vertical on this. So this one is being built out. The actual infrastructure is already put together, but it's the vertical portion that they're working on now. So they're excited about that project, which has been approved in Garden City, and I just wanted to bring it up as it's quite similar and is so far working quite well. Just wanted to quickly zip through all the changes that we've made. Here was the original layout that was brought towards design review. P&Z revisions included adding of some guest parking stall, but still with the 9 townhome concept. After planning and zoning recommendations, we did drop one of the townhomes, and now we've added an additional parking stall. And this was the layout that was brought to you for the first city council meeting. And then this is the layout that we are proposing currently. So a number of the changes, you see them here in red. The big one being the 4 full-size guest parking stalls, a reduction in the width of what we're calling the common driveway, and that is one of the waiver requests, but a reduction in the width of the waiver request, which has allowed us to increase landscape area and also increase the garage portion of the units. So now there are there are 4 dedicated parking stalls for guests and code compliant garage stalls installed in each of the buildings. With the reduction in the width of the roadway, we have been able to provide, like I said, some extra area for the landscaping. Some additional things that the developer is proposing is, since the total open space is less than the 10% provided open space. And that was something that we confirmed with Jenna and Hannah. The developer is proposing adding a water feature, and I've included a picture of that, and I'll go to it. And then also we wanted to touch on the mechanical unit screening as well, since there were comments about the AC units or mechanical units on the buildings there. Along the perimeter of the site, the landscape architect is proposing to put in additional or an increased amount of landscaping here. I just wanted to provide this is what the landscape architect is proposing along the perimeter. So this would be in between the front entrance of the actual building and then the pathway. So within the area surrounding the site on the, let's call it the east, west, and south side of the site, we have this landscape buffer that we are hoping provides a lot more of a screen between any sort of neighbors at this point and provides some sort of access amenity for people who will be traveling along that pathway there. The mechanical unit screening, this is the proposal. There are mini split units. You can see on the bottom right side of this, the two photos, the one to the right. The traditional AC unit here in gray, and then a mini split is smaller. The plan is to screen all the individual units just to hide them a little bit more, so it's not just purely mechanical units, and adds a little bit of architecture, a little flair to that as well. A water feature, as I touched on earlier, the plan was to add some sort of fountain type system in there. We haven't locked anything down and are open to suggestions from council if that's something that they feel strongly about. But the idea there, again, being that if we're under open space, total open space, if we're under that 10%, is there something that we can do there to also increase the just how nice that area is? Just going quickly on it, the original open space plan here, but since we've added some additional space, now we do have the 1,955 square feet. And again, there was some confusion at our first meeting, but it was nice to have a meeting with Hannah and Jenna and ask specifically like, hey, what is it that's code compliant? What isn't? Where is this open space and how can we tally it up? And so this was the number that they came up with. And we said, great, we'll run with it. So there's not a he said, she said, where we think we've got lots of open space wrapped around the building and no, it isn't code compliant. So this is the number that we're happy with and in agreement with what staff has for us there. The existing site just around it, we've talked about this before, but it's in that R3 zoning. And we do think that there is some potential for development in the future for this area. And then I do want to touch on a number of things. We did reconnect with the fire department. This was their comment in regard to the fire sprinkler suppression system. Reducing the road width to 20 feet does not decrease their ability to access the site, and it does not sacrifice safety. And then the second one was Republic Services. We did connect with Republic Services, provide them this exact site plan and suggest to them, hey, this is where we think that the trash cans will go. Will that be an issue? And I know that was a comment that Councilmember President Page had brought up. So we did send this to them in this exact layout and say, where would you like us to put trash cans and anything? And they said at the end of the driveways would be sufficient for them. That's not an issue for them. So we do have both of those questions hopefully locked down. And then I didn't touch on it on the first slide, but we have also extended the pathway around the perimeter of the site, because we had originally at City Council truncated it here at the end of I call it a Snoopy nose, but the hammerhead turnaround. We have extended that around the perimeter of the site as well. So overall, again, I would like to say thank you for your time and thank you for the fact that you allowing us to come back and speak to it. We do feel confident that we've been able to add to the site between last meeting or the recommendation of denial and the reconsideration. So we were appreciative of the fact that we were able to come out here tonight. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Council, any questions for the applicant?
You did, yes.
Okay.
So thank you very much for all of your additional changes. So question about the fire access. So in your emails with the fire department, it certainly addresses the access to the properties within this development. There are two other properties that share this driveway. obviously one of the things that you were able to add to the new properties is the sprinkler systems. And yet there are two other properties that sit on this, that access this. And I didn't see anything that would indicate that those properties were brought into consideration and whether they would be able to be reached safely by the fire department.
Mr. Mayor, the comment that we received from the fire department was that if the buildings were to be over, and I can't remember the exact square height, but I think it was 30 feet. Maybe I'm wrong, but if it was to be 2 stories or higher at that point, the fire department would require the sprinkler system. And my understanding of those existing structures that are at this are single-story dwelling units. Perhaps I'm wrong, but that, if I remember correctly, they're single-story, which would make them compliant with the fire department's code. So all of these interior buildings would be able to be serviced without, or would be able to receive approval from the fire department without fire suppression systems if they were below, and I believe it's basically 2 stories. It's when we're going vertical with it, I think it's over 30 feet is when the fire department asks for that. So that I think answers the question, at least on the existing structures. If these homes decided to redevelop, I think the fire department would then require them to have an additional fire suppression system if the road remained as is.
So as a follow-up on that, so is the driveway wide enough? And I guess what I would feel comfortable about is if we make this decision to approve allowing you to move forward, I think I'd feel more comfortable to have it conditional upon the fire department writing off that, yes, the driveway access is adequate enough to serve those other properties.
I believe that it is, and I do not think that there'd be any hesitation on our side to add that condition. I think that if I remember correctly, there are 1 single-story homes right next door, and the comments from the fire department were pretty specific about a height issue more than just an access issue. So if that's something that you want to put as a condition, I believe that the fire department would be able to provide that clarity on it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. Mr. Schneider?
Thank you.
Mayor and members of the council, hello again. Mr. Schneider did a great job of going through the changes. I do want to note for reference, this matter starts on page 239 of your packet. And I can go through quickly where some of the deficiencies that have, well, the first deficiency that they remedied, as he noted, is that the garage is now meeting the dimensional standards for parking. And so that waiver request has been removed. And the guest parking is satisfied. I do want to note that this area here hasn't changed a lot on design. It is real. One of the points that the council had discussed previously is that perhaps there could be a safety issue if people tried to park in these and a tailgate was into the fire access. They have proposed in their CCNRs to prohibit the parking, and so that's how they're addressing that situation. And I did want to note that the landscaping waiver remains. They have added quite a bit of landscaping, adding, the total is now 1,955 square feet. But as calculated by our associate planner, Ms. Veal, it remains 310 square feet shy. So there would be a waiver that would remain, which is an allowable thing through the plan unit development, should you choose that it should be permitted. The perimeter landscaping also remains deficient. As noted, there's been the addition of the arborvitae, but code requires a certain width. And so through Ms. Veal's analysis, where the width hasn't gotten to the code standard, it is now providing a screening element through that arborvitae. The staff report had talked about lack of shade or trees and planting along the internal pathway. That is not a code specified and has not been addressed. However, the HVAC screening has been addressed, as you heard by Mr. Schneider. And then just to note that there was an arborist report that was submitted in the revised material. And this is an item that was addressed by the council as an original reasoning for cause of denial. It's just additional materials for staff to be able to address the conditions of approval. There is a draft decision that staff has drafted. There were 4 public or agency comments received, but ACHD noted that their comments previously stand. Central District Health noted approval and noted which materials need to be submitted for further review, and Department of Environmental Health and ITD noted no comment. And now back to that decision document. Starting on page 251, the draft decision is drafted both in the approval and denial, since this originally came through and was denied by City Council. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Any questions for Stumbo? Okay, thank you. All right. Okay. All right, no sign up. So with that, well, I guess any further comment, Mr. Schneider? Okay. All right. Okay, with that, we'll close public hearing. And we'll open up for deliberations.
Mr. Mayor.
Council member Perez. Oh, sorry.
I'll start by saying that I appreciate the applicant's efforts to bring this project more in line with code. I'm actually supportive of it now. There are some areas in which, obviously, which you've even stated and acknowledged, are a little bit short of what our code requires. However, you've made some significant improvements on some of the things that were issues when we first heard this. I think it's fair. Well, I think it's fair for me as I consider this thing to look at the lot's dimensions, the constraints that this lot provides on new development, and obviously you guys have experienced those constraints and those challenges. So I think you've done in my mind, the best you can with regard to the constraints of this parcel and with respect to our code. Yes, there are things that we still need to apply waivers to, but I think overall this development, this project is something that's good for our city, even though it's still deficient in some areas. So I hemmed and hawed as whether or not to say this, but I'm going to. I just wish that we didn't have to do this reconsideration process. I think there was ample time before to make all these things happen in advance. But nonetheless, we're where we're at today. And I appreciate the efforts that you all have put into this. So thank you. And I will just say that I am in support of this now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. Any further comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember?
fellow council members, this is one of those unique situations which we took a second look at it, and I think the applicant has done a pretty good job with a what I perceive to be a very challenging lot and situation. And I concur with Councilmember Rasmussen's observations and comments. And I appreciate the efforts and acknowledgement of the comments from the council in making the adjustments. Therefore, I would also vote to approve with the conditions as outlined in the approval documents.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Page?
if there's no further comments from my colleagues, I would move to approve SUB FY 2024-0006, along with the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision document, adding or conditioned on a letter with agency comments addressing the adequacy of fire protection to the adjacent off-application homes as referenced by Councilmember Carver Herbert. I think that's valid. That's my motion.
Good. Yeah, right. So, okay. Any further discussion? Clerk, call roll, please.
Councilmember Page?
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen?
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert?
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes.
So congratulations, Mr. Snyder. Just one editorial on that. So I think one of the things that frustrated some of the council members is that some of these could have been remedied through the process with staff, and they weren't. And so I think if you do another one of these, is listen to staff and take their advice and get that done the first time, because if it doesn't get pulled off the consent agenda, or if it does get pulled off, that's your only chance, right? If it gets denied. And so, because if we do an appeal or reconsideration, it's going to be based on the record. And so you kind of you snuck in under the new code. So,
And there's a 1-year wait.
And there's a 1-year wait too. So there's another kind of so don't do that again, I guess would be based on the new code. So just, we want to develop in the city, but really, I mean, our staff is there to help you to do it right the first time. So we don't have that. So, but with that, I'm glad it got built. It's good for the city. Obviously the changes that you made were what was needed. And so we appreciate you taking that work and that effort. We're excited to see these things built because, as Councilman Rasmussen said, we need this type of development in our city. So, okay, with that, any unfinished business or new business? I'm just going to go 2 words of the right side.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment?
Yes.
So first of all, I wanted to thank my colleagues for the level of patience that you've had with me over the last few months, and for my focus on detail and process and procedure. And I also want to share my thanks to Director Thornborough for I think making great efforts in trying to address many of my concerns. As you know, this is a learning process, and for someone who looks at things from a really different level, I hope that I can continue to add value without creating frustration. But I do appreciate that you've been very patient with me.
Well, you brought up, and Mr. Mayor, if I may add, you brought up some things that I thought were the streamlining, and I meant to say that in my comments, but so I'm going to say it now since you're referring back to it. Streamlining the appeal process so that councils does that now solely. I thought that was a great point. So I appreciate you bringing that up and bringing that point.
And I'll just mention this too, it's like every council member we have adds a lot of value to what we bring. And so I think, and I mentioned this when I took you before, you look at it a different lens, right? And you're also new and learning, but also your level of research and understanding, you raise great questions. So it's, I would say it's never anything to apologize for because we need that value and that input. So then I think having a pretty inquisitive and robust and diverse council is one reason why I personally think we have the best council in the Treasure Valley. And I go toe to toe with any other mayor to prove that theirs is better because I win the argument. So, anyway. So with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say
Aye.
aye. Adjourn. Thank you, everybody.